What's up, John Large? This is David Ducker coming at you. This is for anyone else watching. This is a video response for John Large, my good friend from the Red Dice Diaries, over there in the United Kingdom. I can never remember exactly where. I want to say that it's Manchester-on-Trent. That's probably wrong. This is a video response to his video, which is in turn a video response to Samwise7, that's Tim Harper's video, on how much prep do I do. So Tim said how much he does. John responded with how much prep he does. I'm going to respond and say how much prep I do between sessions. This is a perfect time to record this video, which I just had session last night. So we had session, great session. I'm going to do a recap video for that. When I get home, first thing I do, experience points. I pull up my XP chart, which I use on Microsoft Excel, and I run down. Each character has their own column, and then each event goes crosswise. I can mark how much XP each character got for each event, if any. So I go down, I look at first column, first character, a man, Sauvage Gideon Berengar, it's Charles's character. So I think to myself, what did he do this session? I mark it out. And then I go to the next character, Ulrich Percival Berengar, that's Mike's character. What did he do this session? Mark that out. Go down the line just like that. What did Megan do? What did James do? What did Big Daddy Rick do? What did Josh Powers Pullman do? Not that you'll see Josh and Rick in the same game ever again, but in theory, it could happen like that. And then I just look for where they overlap. Oh, they fought some assassins, and multiple characters fought it. Great. So that XP gets tallied for each of them, unless one of them fled from that combat. Then he probably doesn't get any XP for that. But he might get XP on his solo scene while he's away from the rest of the party. So in this way, right while it's fresh, I can send them out their rewards for this session. And also, I use my XP as my notation system. So if I mark down Sauvage encountered an evil doppelganger of himself, he gets 10 XP just for that plot hook being introduced. Now I've got a record that that plot hook has been introduced from my XP table. So I use my XP table to track my storylines. I also track them on a separate sheet of paper as well to use in-game, because I don't use any digital aids during my sessions. But that's easily step one. And this email will also contain scheduling info for next week's game, and portraits of all the NPCs they encountered this session. Not every setting you can find portraits that easily. I'm currently doing a Game of Thrones style setting, so there's portraits all over the internet, which is great. So session ends, do my XP, send it out to them. I always include, let me know if I forgot anything in this XP tally. And then I look at where are they currently at in the game and what's likely to happen next. So about half the time, we've left on some kind of cliffhanger. So I can really plan what's going to happen next. Oh, they're in the sewers under a burning building that's collapsed. They have to go through the sewers and try to escape the sewers. And the Thieves Guild are in the sewers, and we can trying to kill them. And we can pull up some random encounters for the sewers, like some oozes, some giant rats, spiders, cockroaches, some swarms, perhaps. The hideous mud men or ooze men. Maybe they find an area of the sewer that a mad wizard or a necromancer set up a laboratory in. as they're going through. So I'll think about these things vaguely. Any random encounters, like with monsters, I don't really plan ahead. I'm just like, oh yeah, this would be cool to do that. Sure. And then I just make a note of it, usually in my book. But the other half of the time, the other 50% of our games don't really end on a cliffhanger. We come to a convenient point in the story to end. Characters are bedding down for the night, or sitting down for lunch or dinner are all great examples where we can end a scene effectively. And in this case, I simply go back, I look through that XP chart, I say, what did they do this session? Now, which NPCs would know about that, and what would their reactions be? So we get the ripple effect going out from their action. Every action has reactions from multiple NPCs. Well, not every action, but major actions will send out these ripples. You know, if you light a house on fire and it collapses and you kill Mr. Click, then we're going to get repercussions coming back from that. Believe that with your mind. But this style, like my style of running games, perhaps I should have prefaced this, is open world, sandbox, go anywhere, do anything. For example, currently I've got about 60 NPCs named, prepped in the world, and 15 factions approximately. Different noble houses. This is very Game of Thrones style. A lot of noble houses, but also temples, thieves guilds, merchant conglomerates, wizard cabals, etc., etc. So with this style, there is a lot of prep before the campaign as a whole starts, because I usually prep at least 25 to 50 NPCs before we even have a first session. So that's a fair amount of prep. But then between each individual session, I just record the reactions. I mark down any NPCs I've improvised into being that session, rather. And I might do some work making some more factions or more NPCs independent and add some more scheming in. But my typical ratio is about 1 hour prep per 4 hours of gameplay. So they'll play for 4 hours, and I'll either do no prep, and then we'll have another 4-hour session, and then the next week, then I'll do 1 hour prep. Or theoretically, if we're running 8-hour games instead of 4-hour games, I'll do an hour prep between each game. So that's pretty much all that I need to do with the sandbox style. I mean, that's why I love it. One of the reasons I love it, there are so many others as well, is that I just provide the sandbox, all the geography, the history, I provide the people and the factions, and I set the players loose, and I only have to record their ripples, and I only have to fill in, because it's all sketched, I only need to fill in with detail the areas they actually wander through. So that's all I need to do between sessions. To contrast, if you're running a very linear module railroad style, that's a huge amount of prep between sessions. You've got to write a full adventure between each session with its own NPCs, maybe its own dungeon, its own enemies, a reason, like a plot hook for it, between every session. And this is going to take you, 2 to 4 hours, easily 2 hours to move through and create this linear railroad. If you don't have recurring elements, it's a recipe for GM burnout. By having so many of my elements reoccur, I can put them down, and they're a foundation piece. And then I put down another layer, and I put down another layer. And the world just gets built up and up and up, which is a great thing. You can build a sand castle, whereas in a railroad, it's like one thing, and then we do that thing, and then it's done. So we get another thing, and we do that thing, and it's done. And you just have to keep churning out content. And I don't mind churning out content, but everybody knows dealing with timelines and making sure you can do that every single week can get frustrating. So, plan ahead when you're designing the structure of your world, and in my case, even when you're looking at your play style. Which play style do you want? Because a railroad, if you're running a short game, like 2 to 8 sessions, you might get more out of a railroad. You'll have more fun versus a sandbox for if you only have 8 sessions. That sandbox, you won't get to explore much. So in that case, railroad might be good. You'll still, and the total amount of prep it will be fairly comparable. It's just how you do them. In the sandbox, you can do so much prep at once before you start. With the railroad, you have to slowly nibble away at it. And if you miss one week of prep or 1 hour of prep sometimes, you can just be really stuck behind for a long time. And it can impact the quality of your game, which is not good. So there's a little ramble for you, John, about how I do things. I use a sandbox. I record the events right after they happen, and I record that ripple effect and fill in a few blanks, but that's pretty much it. And then I just, the players next week, they're just back in the sandbox, and they can continue to go anywhere, can continue to do anything. Last session, it's so much fun. Going into it, if you'd asked me, like, what are you going to do this session? No idea. None. And I love that anticipation. I'm like, oh man, there's so much cool stuff for them to do. I got to be on my toes to help them find these cool toys buried in the sand. So to me it's much more interesting than, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to take them from A to B. To the Z, all the way to the Z, baby. That's boring to me as a GM, leading them by the nose. If I know what's going to happen, I'm very bored. And it's more prep. And it's usually less fun in long running games. It's less fun. So I think that's been a good ramble for you, John. I'm probably going to sign out now. I hope it's been somewhat educational. You have a good day, buddy.